guys. Welcome to the Mindset Matters podcast. This episode is produced by Mindset Media and brought to you by the Empowerment Through Mindset Foundation. Cue the intro. Welcome back, guys. The title of this episode is Bridging Education, Service, and Entrepreneurship. Today we're going to look back at an interview between two employees at Dallas College. So first we have Chris Hoffmann, who is the Military Connected Services Program Lead. He is also the founder of the Ambitious Vet Network. He's a member of the Talent Champions Council and of the National Marine Corps Business Network. Has extensive experience with entrepreneurship, as we'll find out here shortly. And then also we have Dr. Macario Hernandez, who is the Dallas College Mountain View campus president. He has spent over 23 years as an educational professional and is a huge asset to Dallas College's mission. So before we dive into this interview, I want to talk for a few minutes about the difference between the contributions that members of college employee bases make towards improving student success. So we're going to talk about the difference between administration, faculty, and staff. So college administration, their primary responsibility is overseeing the institution's operations, their policies, their strategic planning. This group includes high-level leaders. You'll have college presidents, like we just talked about, Dr. Macario Hernandez. You'll have provosts. You'll have deans. You'll have vice presidents, so on and so forth. And so what they're responsible for doing is making sure that there is a strategic vision that their departments or areas of influence are able to move towards. They deal with resource allocation. They deal with regulation and compliance. They ensure that the institution complies with laws for accreditation standards. They have a valuable input on shaping the student experience. So they're going to make decisions that affect the overall student experience. So now we're going to talk about faculty. So faculty, they're the teachers, right? They're the ones who provide the instruction. They teach the curriculum that allows people to learn, to grow, to eventually get their degree and be able to use that to empower them to have a successful career. And so a lot of what they do involves the instruction part, but before that, there's research involved. There's curriculum development involved. There's academic mentorship. So while faculty members don't serve as tutors, they oftentimes are the first source that a student will go to when they have a question or they need a further level of understanding. So they'll have office hours that they do. They'll stay and they'll provide that to the students, along with the back-end work required to grade assignments, provide valuable feedback. And again, so they have a unique area in which they improve the student experience, particularly from the instruction standpoint. Now you also have staff. So staff provide non-teaching support. And so you have the Office of Student Life, you have student engagement, you have at Dallas College, you have support programs, which includes your Male Achievement Program, your Military Connected Services, so on and so forth. And so all of these staff members will provide value for their students. They offer academic advising, they offer career counseling. You've got your career and transfer department. Mental health support also falls into the staff category. Tutoring falls into the staff category. And so they handle the logistics of student enrollment, records, the management of information. So if a student has a question about what they need, usually a staff member will be the first person to provide them with the direction to go here or go there, who they can talk to get an answer to their question. And so those are three of the categories of employee bases inside of educational institutions. And so I want to take this moment to thank Dallas College's staff, administration, and faculty for their commitment to improving the student experience and providing valuable input. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into the interview. I want to talk a little bit about where you guys came from. So we'll start with you, Mr. President for Mountain Beam. What was your journey like going out there? What drew you to be in education?
Well, I grew up not too far from here, probably less than 3 miles from where we're standing here in West Island. So I grew up in the Oak Cliff area, and graduated from Sunset High School. And after Sunset, the first college that gave me an opportunity was Mountain View. So for me, it's a full circle. To me, it's not really a job, it's more of a call because I know what it was to be a student there 30 years ago. Exactly 30 years, 1994 is when I started there. And so to be back here in 2024 as the service president, I'm just truly humbled to be in that role. But I can tell you that the journey hasn't been easy. But I will tell you that my goal is to try to really stay student-centered and trying to figure out what the needs of the students are and how we can support them so they can feel a place of home like I did when I was a student there back in the 90s.
That's an awesome story. Yeah, you can't get a lot more authentic. Born and raised here, so that's awesome. And then for you, Chris, let's talk about your journey.
Yeah, I'm from St. Louis. The Lou is what we call it over there. And I was born and raised there. Went to St. Charles High School out there, and it was very diverse, right? A very diverse high school, and kind of graduated there. Joined the United States Marine Corps, served for 4 years. We did one deployment to Afghanistan. After that deployment, I was kind of just like, I've seen it all. I don't want any more of it, and I want to start a family. And have more stories around why I decided to get out, and a funny story around that. But we may get to that in another episode. But no, I got out, and funny thing is, I got out to find my wife, and it took me about 10 years to find my wife. So it was a journey to find my wife. But now I find myself at Dallas College, and this hits home because although I'm not a minority, I'm a man that was raised by a single mom with. I'm oldest of 3 boys, low income, had to go start mowing lawns at 14 years old to figure out how to help mom get food on the table. So anytime I have a student come in front of me that's just like struggling, it's having me get connected to my heart. So yeah.
I love you. That's great stuff. Very authentic. And again, one thing I pull out of both of you guys' stories is that you mentioned that the story wasn't always easy. You talk about struggle as well. So I just want, when we talk about entrepreneurship, I want you to speak. We'll start with you on the importance of having resilience when you're moving through your journey. So just tell us what that looked like for you. Maybe give us a moment in your life where you had to be extremely resilient, or just an overall view of why it was important for you.
Well, I mean, it's incredible you bring up entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship it's one of the most liberating and most difficult approaches that you can go at, because there's going to be a lot of work involved in it. Well, you're not going to believe it. So the way I paid for my undergrad and supporting my parents too was through an entrepreneurship. I had what's called Hernandez Foods and Spices. It's still registered, so if anyone wants to take the name, hey, be careful, man. It's a trademark. But it wasn't a big business, but I would buy wholesale meat, and I would custom cut it for different restaurants across not only my neighborhood, but also across the Metroplex. But I was doing that. I would wake up at 4 in the morning, talk about struggle. I'd wake up at 4 in the morning, custom cut the meat at the butcher shop, and then I had class at U. And this was wild. This is when I finished at Mountain View. Then I would go to drive to U Denton, and then come back and deliver the meat. So if you know anything about menudo, it's like the breakfast of the champions, but raw it doesn't smell too good. So it didn't matter how many plastic bags I'd put around myself when I was cutting the meat. When I got to university, you could just tell that, the smell didn't come out that easy. But in that process, I was taking nonetheless, I was getting my business degrees, what I was thinking I was going to go into. I was taking a business law class, and I didn't study that night. And so I didn't sleep that night, and my butcher assistant had to go to Mexico. His mom was sick. And so I started with the roughest things, my low reactions. I ended up losing the tip of my finger in 1997 when I was 21. And I'll never forget, I made straight B's that semester, and I told myself, well, I can make B's and lose my finger. From that point on, I never would take anything less than an A. And so and I ended up letting the business go because I started to focus on my schooling. But just to connect, that entrepreneurship is something that's 24/7. it's very rewarding because I want to be able to support my parents and pay for my education without that business. But after that, I had, I did some refocusing and stuff, and we can get to how I ended up in education a little later. But that's pretty much a little story of it. Yeah, man.
So we'll go to you, Chris. Well, let's hear about because I know we talked a little bit about what your initial entrepreneurial venture was like. Talk to me about the need for resilience when you were starting.
Need for resilience. Wow. That's a loaded word, right?
Survival.
Man, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's all about survival, right? I got out of the Marine Corps at San Diego, California, and I was dumb at 24 years old. I didn't know how expensive San Diego's cost of living was. And I had no idea of personal finance, financial literacy, and I had nobody back home because my mom was still struggling. And I was on my own out there in San Diego, California. So I would say that, kind of tying it to entrepreneurship, I mean, and I started a business in military transition and all that stuff, but it was 5 different jobs and 5 different careers within 5 years out of getting out of the Marine Corps until I finally started discovering that in entrepreneurship, how you make money is you brand what you've mastered. There's so many entrepreneurs out there that are trying to make it that are fluff bags. They don't have, meat to their sizzle or whatever. And they're just not legit because they're not branding what they've actually mastered, and people can see that it's not authentic. So after I finally got my psychology degree, I decided to start my own business. I ran it for 6 years till the end of last year, and then Dallas College found me after my second girl popping out. But to tie it to resilience, it's really it's about finding a way to be resourceful when the resources aren't there. Yeah.
You just can't. I think one thing is just never giving up.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to go into entrepreneurship. I come from a lineage of it from my great grandfather, who I just found out from an historical grave site in Carrollton Farmers Branch. He had something called Hernandez Farms, and he passed away in 1925. My grandfather started the first Mexican American business in downtown Dallas. Now it's all gentrified. They used to be Little Mexico. It was kind of African American and Latino community was right there downtown Dallas, but then the North Tollway changed that. It gentrified it. But so I have my father was also an entrepreneur. If it wasn't for my father, there's absolutely no way that I would be where I'm at today. And I'm up bringing that. That's why I have so much respect. Thank you for your services. I have so much respect for the military. My father was in the Army, and my uncle was also an entrepreneur within the Marines. And they're both buried it feels to me it's less than a mile from Mountain View. It's down the hill. I visit my father at least twice a week going to work and at the DFW National Cemetery. But if it wasn't for their entrepreneurial spirit and the foundation they're laying, there's absolutely no way I can be where I'm at today. The fact that he can be at my parent conferences, the fact that he could be there for me when I was in school, he could only do that because he had his own business. And I always thought I was going to go into my own business. I really did believe that. And I am. In about 3 or 4 years, I have a plan to go, it's in the future when I retire. I do plan to step back into the world of entrepreneurship. And I'm also trying to train my daughter as she goes in the future when she finishes law school. I want her to think about her own practice. There's something very liberating when you're an entrepreneur. And so that's something that I appreciate you really bringing and exposing the importance of it. Now, it takes a lot of work, and it's a 24/7 hour job. Anybody tells you otherwise, they may not have ever been an entrepreneur. But what you get, the price I think you pay is worth it, in my opinion, in the long run. But
Yeah.
it's tough, right?
It really is.
It's tough.
Especially when you start having
A family, if you wait to a risk tolerance, there you go. You want to have something stable and something, and it's not that simple. And in the world of entrepreneurship, you can lose everything overnight, but you can also gain everything. It's a high risk, high reward situation. And I want you to know that we're on to something pretty major. I'm just going to share this real quick because this Dallas College related, and it's just a conversation. So I don't want to give too much information because it's still pilot being considered. We're looking at veterans who are serving time and we're thinking about providing an entrepreneurship program for them. So when they come out, because when you come out of being incarcerated, it's hard to get a job. But if you know entrepreneurship and know how to have your own business, now you have a shot. This came from a guy, it's called the Independence Program. We don't know much about it. We're thinking about getting involved in it. But this was an individual who used to have $6 million in bank assets. He was a banker. And he got caught up in jail, and he realized all the talent inside there. And he also has a lot of respect for the veterans. He goes, why not? We know that you can't get a job coming out. Let's see if we can train them while they're in locked up on how to be an entrepreneur. And that when they come out, they're not like just trying to do, they're only going to get construction jobs or jobs where they're, because of their background. But an entrepreneur, when you have your own business, guess what? You can have your own business. There's no law against you trying to start your LLC or whatever however you get started. So they want to do the training right before they come out so they can they can give back to our society instead of being caught up in something that's just going to end up being there.
Yeah. So busting Barrett.
Something there, yeah. I'll connect with those guys too.
Absolutely. And that's just amazing to see that
Dallas College is thinking about, they say, all right, but they're looking for opportunities to create an avenue towards success.
Yes.
So there's two things I want to talk about that came out of our conversation, just hearing you guys' story, authenticity and freedom. So the first thing, authenticity, the power of authenticity. It's one of, and I read this somewhere, that it's the most powerful connection that you can have with another person is authenticity. It's easy to spot when it's there. It's also easy to spot when it's not. And so you talked about branding, right? You talked about coming from an authentic space, what you mastered. I'll ask both of you guys the importance of making sure that you ground what you do and where you came from, and making sure that you never lose who you are. Talk about why that's important to be successful in business and also just in life.
Yeah, so I'll start with that, because where I got that is through a workshop that I paid out of pocket. Because in my 20s, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had the federal benefits, but I also was making money. To President Hernandez's point, I was side hustling too, and my background only would allot me nightclub security. So I was working nightclub security in downtown San Diego from like 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. and I was investing all that money into people that had resources. And that's one of my things over the past 6 years is I wanted veterans to kind of understand that we're trying to get entrepreneurs, go from one, right? If you want to be around people with resources, you have to provide resources. If you ask for free things, you're going to get free support, which is goodwill, right? Goodwill can be deceptive sometimes, right? And the motives might be off. But if you're around people with resources, then things start moving quicker, right? You can get capital, stuff like that. So we're just learning how to get in those rooms. But my point is I got that out of the workshop, right? The brand which you mastered, because I was like, man, I want to start a business. I have all these different skill sets that have taught me how to survive in life, because I was a guy that had to figure out how to survive, never felt safe, you know what I mean? And had to find ways to just find a dollar. But, to be authentic with that is I was like, man, like, what have I mastered? It was the military. I was like, okay, well, what's the problem in the military transition, right? Space. I started analyzing the market, right? Started, figuring out what other veteran service organizations are out there. The entrepreneur training and development space was pretty hit on with like Bunker Labs and a few other big organizations. But then I was like, what kind of educations for like career readiness? And I started understanding these gaps around like emotional intelligence, personal development training for veterans, because a lot of them are better off seen, not heard. And that's some of the biggest feedback that employers have towards veterans is like, oh, they're good at taking orders, but they're not good at critical thinking skills. So right then and there, I still was not a master at teaching that content, because I was still only about 30 years old, which people look at me and I still look, I'm 19, right? I guess it's just the genes. But what I did is I got good at persuading and influencing people that were older than me that could buy into a vision. So I built a board, got a 2-star Army general on my board who taught workshops, was a DE&I officer for USAA. He came in, would teach these kind of workshops, and I just built out a faculty of subject matter experts that would come in and teach this content to veterans. So it was just being real with what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and then building teams and finding resources around what I wasn't. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I would say is that, I think to his point is that you got to be honest with yourself. The biggest piece is, and when you talk about authenticity, the moment you start changing who you are is the moment you stop making a difference. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
We talk about disrupting systems, or we're going to try to put the system on on trial. At the end of the day, we all come with what I call, and at least in my story, was like this intergenerational consciousness. His experiences with his mother, my experiences with my father, experiences of how we grew up, that all plays a role in how we behave today. But the worst thing we could do is not take all those values and beliefs that's been taught to us, and even through struggle, even through the tough times, we still got to bring that to our workplace, because that's how you're going to connect to the people you're trying to serve. You can't serve a population from a place that's not authentic, and you'll notice that. So there's a lot of value in what we bring, and that's why I tell students all the time, please don't change who you are. There's no such thing as a crazy idea. I mean, there's crazy ideas that have made people some of the biggest entrepreneurs in this nation, right? Or in the world. There's no such thing as a crazy idea. It's just follow your passion, follow your heart, and don't give up on the dream. And it's going to be hard, but you do that. And that's why in our spaces, we got to be honest with people. I sometimes have to pinch myself and ask and I'll have people that grew up in this neighborhood come by. I had to go see for myself, man, if you're really in that role. I mean, look, we all have a history and we all grew up, a certain way, but it's because I'm proud of being from Oak Cliff. I'm proud of being from where I'm at. There's nothing I don't have any shame in my culture, my language, and who I am, because if anything, I'm here to offer. I think we all, no matter what your backgrounds, have something to offer our society. And in the business world, even more so, because we know business is what kind of helps us move the economy. So, I mean, I just think that be true to yourself, and that way you can be true to everybody else around you.
I love that. Yeah. And from both of you, great answers. And just to kind of add on to that, I really believe that business, and I read this somewhere, is the language of making things happen. And if you're a conscious person, if you're authentic with where you come from, if you connect with people, and you have a reason to add value to society, that you can make a lot of good things happen using business acumen, using business principles, understanding the importance of, like we said, authenticity. But I want to shift to freedom too, because we talked about this earlier in our conversation. You said there's a lot of things that could not be done for you if entrepreneurship was not something that existed in the factor. Yeah, that was not something that was a factor. And then you also talked about entrepreneurship, how bootstrapping it, we kind of use that expression in past conversations, but the freedom is worth the price that you have to pay for it. So I just want to hear what you guys' thoughts are on the importance of understanding the freedom that entrepreneurship gives you, and then what would you tell people about that?
So are we talking about time, money freedom, or all the above?
All of the above. Yeah. Freedom's a wide category.
Oh, man. Like for example, my daughter, my 3-year-old, had a Thanksgiving party at her childcare today at 11 o'clock. I wasn't able to make it. For 6 years, I could have made that, right? But, I'm doing great work for Dallas College, but the freedom of entrepreneurship is like, yeah, you can do that. But when you got kids, you have responsibilities, you have to show up to those. So just to be real with you, a lot of these entrepreneurs that are online, YouTubers, stuff like that, I would actually see if they actually have kids or something like that they have to report. They're acting like they have all this time freedom and all this kind of stuff, but do they really, right? I would also say that the freedom for 6 years, because I had a couple contracts with big companies that ended up pushing us out at the end of 2023 due to the economy and just layoffs, and then they saw us as a consultant that, was just fat that they could just cut off and push us out of the organization, right? But I was like, over the past 6 years, the freedom has been liberating. It's a feeling of, a sense of power that you've never had before, right? And not from a place of like, oh man, look at me, but just like, look, like I could do what I want, when I want to do it, and I know how to build out processes and systems and teams to help move me forward, right? But God always has. And that's what he did for me at the end of 2023. God, and I told you this, I think at the UT Austin trip, is God always has a way to put you back in your place. And I think at the end of 2023, I was like, oh man, I'm doing good now. I kind of enjoyed the freedom too much. Stopped doing the work that got me there. And then I lost my freedom, right? So
It's a big price. I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's a big sacrifice. You're going to pay for it with the hard work and dedication that you put into a business, right? But you're right. You know, there's nothing like being your own boss. I mean, you make your own schedule. You're gonna, but just know that sometimes it's harder to work for yourself than it is to work for somebody else.
Really,
and that's one thing a lot of people don't understand about
all
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You're gonna have you're when I say 24/7, it's 24/7. You know, my father promised we were going to go into business together, and it was like that. And I'll tell you, I was so excited. I saved up like $50,000. I did my 2-3 years of teaching, and then I get the money together. I said, "Fuck, Dad, I'm ready, man. Look, I proved to you." He said, I tried to tell him before I got my bachelor's. He goes, "No, man, I'm not going to do business with someone that doesn't have a bachelor's." I'm like, "Come on, Dad." He was just trying to push me, right? It was, that's a military father, man. It's a military father. I got my first hug when I got my master's. Okay. You know, that's what I'm saying. So it's exactly. He knows exactly what's going on, and so. So here I am. I got this capital. I thought it was capital. I got 50 grand. I saved it up. I paid off my parents' house because they were almost going to take it. It's a whole other story. And he goes, "You know, son, I don't think you understand what the business world is. What you're doing right now as a teacher may have a bigger impact than what you and I are going to go do in business right now." So, and also, I'm looking at you my goal was for you to just have that drive and the energy to do what you got to do. And I ended up getting the master's too, right? I got my master's too. I still went back to him. Dad, now I got 70,000 with a master's. He goes, "No, son, I don't think you're listening.
That's not the point.
That's not the point." And what he keeps trying to tell me is that, and I know I'm going to find out what time. I found out what time it is. He goes, "The sacrifice you're going to make to your family, that's what you just shared, may be too great." And I think the impact you're making in education, son, you might have found something. You need to keep doing this. So, of course, I always looked up to my father, and I took his advice. And we never did business, but I know to this day that I will do business because of the legacy we've had from my great-grandfather and my grandfather. It's just going to take a little longer. It's going to be during retirement. But I'll at least have 25, 30 years of my own business, I think, in the future. But what my father was trying to teach me in all the years he was in business is that there's a flip side to every coin. The sacrifice that comes with it. And I think people need to know that if you choose to go into entrepreneurship, it's a great freedom. Right. But what comes with that freedom is a real serious responsibility.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, even coming back into the workforce, there is a sense of freedom as far as peace of mind.
That's right.
A big, light weight lifted. Like the past 8 months I've been working for Dallas College has been the most rested I have felt over the past 6 years. My wife gets a better man. My girls get a better father because I'm not so focused on building a business and obsessing over it. So there is another sense of freedom on the other side of the coin.
So that's what my father was trying to tell me and what you told me you're experiencing. However, let's be honest, if you really want to go big, entrepreneurship is probably one of the best ways to go. Like I said, big risk, big reward.
People want the reward. They don't always realize the risk involved. I know I always get a lot of flack for how often I have my laptop open, but and we've talked about this even on the UT trip. We talked about this, the importance that you kind of identified it early. You know, like when you're trying to make something happen, there is a whole lot of commitment involved. It occupies a lot of your time. You do have to be willing and able to make the sacrifice, and I think that's a key principle to know. Like, you know that you have a family, and so willingness has to match the ability. You have to be able to say, okay, can I do this at this point in time? So maybe you say, I'm going to wait until this point in time before I relaunch into entrepreneurship. And I know you're talking about the timing with regards to when you're going to get back, when you're going to get into entrepreneurship. And it's just knowing, okay, you're willing to now, but you know, okay, I'm going to be able to do it in a couple of years. Both of those things will match up, and then I can pursue it.
That's right.
And so, like, whenever I'm looking at building things out, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, the willingness is here. I have the ability right now in my life to commit the time to doing it, and so that's what I'm on my journey to doing. But I do think in the back of my mind, I'm looking at what life can give and provide that can affect that decision. So it just picking your spots, being intentional. There's a place for everything in life, but entrepreneurship is always going to be an asset if it's something that people pursue. So I know you guys both have things that you need to do. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down and have this conversation. And I want to, thank you guys as members of Dallas College's employees, you as the president for the Mountain View campus, and yourself working with support programs for the work that you do to help the student body. And I think they're really going to benefit from hearing you guys' story, from understanding what your mindsets are. So thank you guys very much for being part of this.
Thanks for.
Well,
thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Take care, guys. Thank you.
All right.
I want to thank you, Dr. Hernandez and Chris Hoffmann, for the time that you took out of your schedules to be able to conduct this interview and to provide your story as an inspiration to the student body. So I want you guys to take something away from this. It's very important. Here you have your college president for Mountain View. You got your military connected services program lead. Very valuable key contributors to Dallas College's employee base. And what you'll notice about them is that they're people just like you. So regardless of the prestige of the position, regardless of the amount of work required to create impact inside of education, what you'll notice about their story is that they either have or plan to engage in entrepreneurial journeys. And so I just want to speak to the power of entrepreneurship and the ability that that has to change people's lives and to empower them. And so if a college president and a program lead for military connected services can see the value in entrepreneurship, either having done it or planning to do it, I want you as students to know that even as you pursue your degree, even as you succeed academically and thrive inside of this educational institution at Dallas College and the resources that they provide, entrepreneurship can be a source of empowerment for you too. And so I want you to think about the things that you're passionate about. I want you to realize that you have the ability to execute on things even now as a student. Don't let the circumstances in your life shape how you decide to move towards what you want to do in life. Take opportunities to do what you're passionate about now, and always keep growing, always keep learning, utilize the resources around you, and take inspiration from stories like the ones you've heard today. So with that being said, before we close out, I do want to introduce a very special segment. So Daniel has prepared us with some information. We are going through a very difficult time. These last few weeks have been trying for a lot of people inside of the community and inside of educational spaces. So please pay close attention to the information that is going to be provided in this next segment for people who are going through this difficult time.
Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at the Empowerment Through Mindset Foundation.
ETMF.
ETMF. Yeah, as they kind of navigate the impacts of Senate Bill 4 in Texas.
SB4.
SB4,
yeah.
Right? And also some recent executive orders. We've been getting a lot of questions about, how are they responding to these new challenges? And,
Absolutely.
And we've got some intel to break down.
Yeah, we do. We actually have a letter from the president laying out their commitment.
Wow.
But we've also got some additional information that gives us a little peek behind the scenes at how they're putting those words into action.
So the president's letter, it acknowledges the concerns and anxieties that these policies are causing, but it's more than just acknowledging the difficulties. He's really emphasizing that the foundation wants to focus on empowerment through education and community support.
Yeah, and what really struck me is this charge to the board to provide the necessary support for the community, and that he's proud of the work that the board has already done.
Interesting, because he doesn't just say, we need to do something. He specifically calls out individuals who are leading the charge.
Right.
We see Natalie Garcia taking point on the educational front and Jacob Zaragoza heading up community engagement.
That's right. It's a clear signal that this is about concrete action, not just rhetoric.
Okay, so let's dive into that action. What exactly is Natalie doing to tackle this?
Well, she's got a multi-pronged approach. First, she's diving into research, but not just any research.
Right.
It's about understanding the nuances of SB4 and the executive orders.
Yeah.
So things like, what are the specific provisions that are causing the most concern?
Mm-hmm.
What are the legal precedents and potential challenges? It's about gathering the information needed to craft effective strategies.
So it's like she's building the knowledge base first.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. But how does that translate into actually empowering people?
Well, that's where her focus on education comes in. Once she has a solid grasp of the legal landscape, she can start creating resources and initiatives to educate the community about their rights. So think workshops, informational materials, even online platforms,
Interesting.
all designed to empower individuals with knowledge and dispel misinformation that might be circulating.
So it's not just waiting for problems to arise.
Right.
It's giving people the tools to understand and navigate the situation from the get-go.
Exactly.
What about the advocacy piece? You mentioned that earlier.
Oh, right. So that's the third layer of Natalie's strategy.
Okay.
Once people are informed about their rights, she's exploring ways to advocate for positive change. So this could mean working with legal experts to challenge certain provisions of SB4 or the executive orders.
Oh, wow.
It could involve lobbying efforts to push for more humane and equitable policies. It's about taking that knowledge and turning it into action to create systemic change.
So Natalie has got her work cut out for her tackling all those different angles. Now on the community side, we've got Jacob Zaragoza leading the efforts. What's his approach to supporting the community through all of this?
Well, Jacob's role is all about creating a safety net, a support system for those most directly impacted by these policies. This could mean connecting families with legal aid resources, providing counseling services, or even organizing community gatherings to foster a sense of solidarity and shared resilience. His focus is on making sure that people don't feel isolated and overwhelmed by these challenges.
So it sounds like Jacob is working on a much more interpersonal level, addressing the very real human needs that arise from these policies. It's about building a sense of community, right?
Exactly. And you know, what's interesting is that while their approaches might seem different, Natalie and Jacob's work is actually deeply interconnected. By educating people about their rights and creating a supportive community network,
Right.
they're working in tandem to build resilience and empower those who are most vulnerable.
That's a really important point. It's not just about legal knowledge or community support in isolation. It's about how those two things work together to create a stronger, more empowered community. It's about recognizing that these issues touch on people's lives on multiple levels.
Precisely. And that holistic approach is what I find so compelling about ETMF's response. They're not just putting out fires, they're strategically addressing the underlying issues and creating a framework for long-term empowerment.
We're seeing a really comprehensive strategy here with research, education, advocacy, and community support all working together. But how is all of this actually playing out in the real world? How is ETMF translating these plans into tangible actions?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. They're actively engaging with universities like UNT, UTA, and UTD, tapping into the expertise and resources these institutions can offer.
Wow.
So you can imagine research collaborations, student internships, even community outreach programs. These partnerships are key to amplifying their impact and ensuring they're using a data-driven approach.
Hold on, data-driven approach. Tell me more about that.
Okay, sure. So by working with universities, ETMF can access data and research on the specific needs and challenges faced by different communities, impacted by SB4 and executive orders.
Right.
This allows them to tailor their educational materials, advocacy efforts, and community support programs for maximum impact. It's about being strategic and using evidence to guide their decisions rather than just relying on intuition or guesswork.
Okay, so they're not just throwing resources at the problem. They're being smart and targeted in their approach. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what does this all mean for the people on the ground, the families and individuals directly affected by these policies?
That's a question we'll be exploring in more depth as we continue this deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, I think it's important to acknowledge the sense of hope that underpins ETMF's message. The president's letter, Natalie and Jacob's work, it all points to a belief that even in the face of challenging policies, there's a path forward.
That's a powerful message, especially in a time when things can feel so uncertain. So what's next for ETMF? How are they planning to build on this foundation of research, education, and community support?
That's a great question, and one that we'll be digging into as we continue this deep dive. So stay tuned as we explore the next chapter of ETMF's journey and unpack the potential impact of their work. One thing that really struck me about the president's letter was this focus on the rights of students and parents,
Yeah.
particularly within the education system, almost like a roadmap
Okay.
to help families navigate this really complex legal landscape created by SB4 and these executive orders.
I noticed that too, yeah. He doesn't shy away from the legal complexities at all.
No.
In fact, he even mentions the Supreme Court case, Plyler v. Doe.
Oh, that's a key case to understand in this context.
Yeah.
Essentially, it guarantees the right to public education for all children,
Regardless of...
regardless of their immigration status.
Right.
It's a landmark decision that's especially important now, given the climate of uncertainty and fear surrounding SB4.
So the president is reminding everyone that despite these new policies, that fundamental right to education remains protected.
Right.
It feels like he's laying down a marker, saying, we know our rights, and we're going to fight to uphold them.
Exactly. And that's where Natalie's work becomes so crucial.
Yeah.
She's not just an educator. She's becoming an advocate, making sure that those rights are understood and protected, especially when it comes to schools and how they handle these sensitive situations.
He even gets into some pretty specific recommendations for schools, right? Like having clear policies in place just in case immigration officers show up on campus.
It's a chilling thought, I know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's the reality we're facing. The president is urging schools to be prepared, to have plans in place to protect their students. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
He also talks about the importance of things like emergency contacts,
Right.
designated trusted individuals, and keeping school information updated. All those practical steps that could make a huge difference in a crisis.
It's about empowering families, giving them the tools and the knowledge to navigate these challenges and protect their children. And remember that sense of empowerment.
Right.
Providing the tools and resources is truly at the core of ETMF's mission.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking that these are conversations families are now having to have.
I know.
But it's also inspiring to see ETMF stepping up
Yeah.
to provide that guidance and support.
Absolutely. But amidst all of this, there's this thread of hope running through the president's message.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of community, of coming together in times of adversity.
That's where Jacob's work comes in.
And that's where Jacob's work on the community level really shines.
Right. It's about building those community networks,
Yeah.
those support systems.
Mm-hmm.
That's what creates resilience, what helps people get through tough times. It's that sense of knowing you're not alone,
Right.
that there are people who care and who are fighting alongside you.
Exactly. And that message is so powerful, especially when facing something as daunting as SB4 or these executive orders. It can feel really overwhelming, but knowing you have a community behind you can make a huge difference.
What I find particularly striking is how the president doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
Yeah.
He acknowledges the pain, the fear, the very real consequences of these policies, but he doesn't let it paralyze him.
Absolutely.
It's channeling that energy into action, into concrete steps to support the community. He talks about information sessions, access to legal aid, advocating for educational rights,
Right.
all these proactive measures to empower people and protect their rights.
And it's not just talk.
Yeah.
It's clear from what we know about Natalie and Jacob that he's mobilizing his team and putting resources behind these initiatives.
Right.
It's that clear message of commitment from ETMF that's so important.
It does feel like a call to action, not just for ETMF, but for the entire community.
Absolutely. This is about collective action, about standing together in the face of adversity.
Recognizing that even in challenging times, there's always hope and there's always a way forward.
Right.
And that's where I think the president's message really resonates.
He ends his letter by speaking directly to students and community members.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
It's personal, heartfelt, and incredibly inspiring.
You can really feel his sincerity when he reminds students that their education is a right, not a privilege, and encourages them to keep learning, growing, and dreaming big.
And to the community, he expresses so much admiration for their strength and resilience.
Yeah.
Assuring them that together they will ensure that educational institutions remain safe spaces for learning and growth.
It's a really powerful message of solidarity and hope, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can shine through.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
What can we learn from ETMF's approach? What can we each do to support and empower those impacted by these policies?
You know, I was thinking the same thing.
Brave.
They could have easily just issued a statement expressing concern and left it at that. But they didn't. They chose to dig in, to understand the situation, and to take concrete action. They're not just reacting, they're leading. It's that commitment to action that really stands out to me. It's not just talking about empowerment. They're putting in the work to make it a reality.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating is how they're thinking about the long game. They're not just reacting to the immediate crisis.
Right.
They're trying to build something that will have a lasting impact.
You're right. It's like they're planting seeds of change that will hopefully grow and flourish long after these specific challenges have passed.
And that brings me back to something the president said in his letter. He said, "In times of uncertainty, being educated and connected become our greatest strengths."
It's a simple statement, but it's so profound.
I know, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
It's not about burying our heads in the sand or
Yeah.
giving into fear and despair. It's about leaning into knowledge,
Yeah.
building connections, and using those tools to create a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. And that's a message that resonates regardless of your background or your beliefs. It's a universal truth that knowledge and connection are empowering forces.
So what does all of this mean for you, our listener?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, there's always hope.
Yeah.
There are people and organizations out there like ETMF working tirelessly to make a difference.
And second, it's an invitation to get involved.
Okay.
Whether it's supporting organizations like ETMF, educating yourself about the issues, or simply having conversations with your friends and family.
Yeah,
Each of us can play a role in creating a more just and compassionate society.
absolutely. We can all choose to be a part of that ripple effect, spreading knowledge, building connections, and advocating for positive change.
Right. And that's something worth remembering as we move forward. It's a reminder that even small actions can have a big impact when we work together.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. We started with SB4 and these executive orders, but we ended up exploring the power of hope, community, and action.
Yeah, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the potential for positive change, even in the face of daunting challenges.
Absolutely. And as ETMF continues its work, we'll be keeping a close eye on their progress and sharing updates with you along the way.
So stay tuned, stay curious, and stay engaged. This is a story that's still unfolding, and we're all a part of it.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time.
Thank you, Daniel. So for more information about how to navigate this difficult time that we are facing, whether you're a member of education or the community, stick and stay with etmfoundation.com. At our resource page, we will have continual updates on information that can support and provide empowerment during this time of difficulty. So if you found this episode to be valuable, please like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and always remember, mindset matters only for the hardworking.